Hello and welcome to day 1 of our mindful eating challenge. Before we dive into the tips, tricks, and the exercises for each day, I really thought we would start with just a quick touch on what is mindful eating and why is it so important for long-term healthy eating. So if you think about it, mindful eating is just building awareness or tuning in to both why you're eating, so what's the reason, as well as what you're eating, so that your brain can appreciate that the food has kind of come in or you've satisfied a craving and turn off those really nagging signals or thoughts about food. One of the biggest problems my clients come in with is it feels like cravings for sugar or salty or starchy things are controlling them, and it's really throwing them off track instead of them being in control of choosing what they want to eat and what fits their goals. So we are going to dive into building that natural portion control and working on making it much easier to make good choices and still enjoy treats long term. So let's dive in. Day 1 is all about figuring out what kind of hungry are you? And this might seem like a funny question if you've never asked it, but I think about hunger in 4 varieties. So the first is physical hunger, the second is emotional or kind of feeling hunger, the third is habit hunger, and the fourth is just taste or craving. So physical hunger is that pure sort of physical sensation that your stomach is empty and rumbling. Sometimes we feel it a little bit in the back of our throat and your brain is really pushing you to eat. Your symptoms might be more mild, so sometimes people get a little headachy if they've waited too long. And for people who've dieted, this one might actually be sort of rolled over a little bit because you've ignored it for a long time. The trick with physical hunger and how to tell it apart from the others is that it is not specific. So you might get hungry and think, gosh, I'd like crackers and cheese. But if I showed up in your living room with like celery and hummus or something that's not offensive but kind of boring, you would still eat it because you were hungry. So non-specific and generally associated with some sort of physical feeling. The second type of hunger is emotional hunger, and this is the one we tend to struggle with most as humans and as a culture. So hands up if you've ever eaten if you are stressed or tired or angry or just wanting to tune out at the end of the day. This is a super normal cue from your brain. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but if it's happening often enough or you don't have other strategies, it can really hold you back because, well, gosh, we are stressed, tired, upset often. That's just the nature of everyday life. So emotional hunger tends to be very specific. So typically if you were thinking about, I'm really tired, it would feel so good to have some ice cream. If I showed up with those celery and hummus snacks, you would probably be like, Michelle, you may leave my living room. So it's really specific to a few foods that feel really comforting because they're going to give your brain the little bump in happy hormones that it's looking for. And the trick to this one is we will have to learn how to fill that hole with things other than food sometimes. The third type is habit eating. So how many of us have a snack at like 2 or 3 p.m. every day without even thinking about whether we're hungry or not? So just because it's coffee break or that's the lull in our workday, we always bring a snack and we always eat the snack no matter what else has happened. Habit can be a really powerful one because we get so used to doing it, your brain gets in and cues you to do it even if you forget. But the challenge is we're not actually responding to our body's needs day to day, and that can mean a lot of extra calories. So if you have one extra snack, say just a really healthy one even at a couple hundred calories, that's almost 1,400 calories over a week. And if you need those and they're healthy and nourishing and you're responding to physical hunger, that's awesome. But if you're really noticing that you're seeing slow progress in weight loss or your gut is really upset because you're eating frequently and you don't need it, that might be something to look into. So again, no shame here. Sometimes it's a healthy choice, but we really want to make sure when we're eating, it is mostly in response to that physical cue. And the last one is a pure taste or craving hunger. So this one has nothing to do with how you're feeling, with what your body needs. You kind of smell freshly baked bread or you see the donuts at Tim's and you want that food. So your nose gets in on it, your brain gets in on it, and your stomach sometimes whips up with that kind of rumbling. This is a really normal one. Brains and humans love food and it's delicious. And what we want is for you to be able to make this decision in the context of your week and your goals. So sometimes it's going to be totally awesome to have that treat, but what we want is to go, if you've already had a bunch this week, and your goal is also weight loss, you can kind of make that thoughtfully and choose treats that really matter as opposed to giving in to every little impulse our brain pops up. One of the challenges with those taste kind of cravings is that we make over 300 food-related decisions a day, and we see much more in terms of marketing. If you think about every meal, every snack, every kind of thing you hear about on the radio, on Instagram, we are constantly being exposed to food stimulus. And so as a culture, our kind of food cravings have gone up. So it's important to be thoughtful about this one, but again, no shame in any of them. A few tips on how to deal with them. The very first one is if you are physically hungry and you've got more than an hour to your next meal or snack, eat something. The goal is never to starve yourself out, and if you've done a lot of dieting, you might have to retrain this, so your kickback might actually be to ignore physical hunger. The challenge is if we ignore that really strong physical hunger too long, you get over hungry and you end up face planting in a very big bowl of food later on, and that's just kicking your butt, and we tend to feel shameful about it. The second and other really challenging one is emotional hunger. So because this one is driven by feeling and our brain really looking for some sort of bump, it can be challenging to say no in the moment. One of the two things I ask my clients to do is take a pause and do something else positive for a couple minutes. If it helps, set a timer so your brain can just chill out. So that might be reading a chapter of a book, it might be walking down the hall to chat with a friend at the office, it might be a bath, it might be something really small like making a cup of tea, but just give your brain a little bit of that happy hormone bump it's looking for and put a little bit of space between that cue to eat and the eating. After you've done that self-care moment, you can decide if eating would feel good physically and if eating would feel good emotionally, and if both of those tick off, great, have the snack, have the treat. If you know you're going to eat something that's going to feel really gross on your stomach, or you're going to feel awful, or you'd rather save that treat for something more valuable later in the week, it's a no. Go to bed, get out of the kitchen, find a way to kind of move out of range so that you're not constantly triggered by it. And the last one is those habit cravings. So if we think about habit cravings, those can be really powerful because your brain is turning on that cue every day, especially if you've been having that 3 p.m. snack for the last 15 years. One of the easiest ways to do that is to insert something else, so like a tea or a bubbly water, something to do with your mouth and hands. The other would be to try switching to every other day. So breaking that habit gently as opposed to going cold turkey tends to be more successful because your brain doesn't fight it as much. I hope you found this really helpful, and I want you to do one thing for me. So the rest of today or starting first thing tomorrow, write down everything you eat that's not a meal and why you ate it. You can even do that today if you want to reflect back a little bit. Was it physical hunger? Was it emotional hunger? Was it a habit, you just do it every day? Or was it a pure taste craving, you kind of smelled or saw and wanted it? So make a note of which situations are most triggering your food actions and chime in. So comment below or send me a message so that we can chat about how to best handle that. Have an awesome day.